Amidst the ongoing tussle between the executive and the judiciary over the process of appointments, a day after the Supreme Court expressed displeasure over the delay in the appointment of judges, the President has approved the elevation of 5 judges to the apex court. Those judges are up on your screen right now. The Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju extended best wishes to these judges, saying as per the provisions of the Constitution of India, the Hon'ble President has appointed the following Chief Justices and judges to the High Courts and judges of the Supreme Court. I extend my best wishes to all of them. Mr. Rijiju tweeted the names of the 5 judges have been cleared by the Centre for the Supreme Court amidst a protracted tussle between the executive and the judiciary over the process of appointments. And facing tough questions from the top court, the Centre had promised a day ago that the pending recommendations of the panel of judges known as the Collegium for the elevation of 5 High Court justices will be announced by Sunday. Let's go across to Arvind Gunasekar, who broke the story earlier in the day. Arvind, this of course comes with the government pressing for a greater role in the appointment of the judges, but the Supreme Court had actually taken an unusual step where they then announced the name of 2 more judges this weekend. Is that unusual, and does that really mean the Supreme Court playing hardball and eventually the government blinking?
Yeah, Sarah, after sitting over the recommendation of appointment of 5 judges to the Supreme Court for almost 2 months, today Centre has cleared all these 5 names for appointment as judges to the apex court. President signed their warrants earlier today, and the Centre has issued notification appointing all these 5 judges as the judges of Supreme Court. So all these 5 judges will be sworn in as judges of the Supreme Court on Monday at around 10:30 a.m. in a ceremony inside Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court Collegium had recommended all these 5 names sometime on December 13th. And Centre sat over these names for almost 2 months, and that's why Supreme Court took note of the delay of clearing these names on judicial side. They issued notice to the Centre government. They asked the Centre government in a clear-cut way, why is there a delay in clearing these names? In fact, Centre wanted an answer from the Centre, and they asked the Attorney General to ensure that he personally intervenes and then get all these 5 names cleared so that appointment can be done at earliest. And in an unusual manner, Supreme Court took this delay on the judicial side, and that's why they brought the Attorney General to the courtroom, and they had asked for a clarification answer from the Attorney General, and that's why the Attorney General told the Supreme Court that he will intervene, and then he will make sure that all these 5 names get cleared as early as possible. So in February first week, Supreme Court had also recommended 2 more names for appointment to the apex court, and that's where Supreme Court came up with a condition saying that the first 5 names that were recommended in the December 2nd week should be cleared first before Centre considering these 2 names, and that resulted in Centre moving fast with the names that were recommended on December 13th, and then today we did see Centre issuing notification for all these 5 judges. So with appointment of these 5 judges, so the strength of the Supreme Court will also increase, and then all these 5 judges will be sworn in as judges of the Supreme Court on Monday at around 10:30 a.m. Right after that, all these 5 judges will assume office, and they will start hearing cases on Monday itself.
And we'll only then have 2 vacancies left, correct, Arvind? Thanks so much for that. Let's bring in our panelists tonight on Left, Right and Centre. We have Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, Professor Faizan Mustafa, a constitutional expert, Ranveer Singh Patania, an advocate and spokesperson of the BJP, and Ashutosh Srivastav, advocate of the Supreme Court. Sanjay Hegde, let me ask you what I was asking Arvind over there. The Supreme Court, usually the Collegium waits for a file to be cleared first before sending more recommendations. But in this case, they said, you have these 5 waiting, but we're going to recommend 2 more. And first, these 5 have to be cleared. Really, all this hardball games, I mean, not seemly for the executive and the judiciary.
I do agree that it is not seemly. There shouldn't be this kind of public posturing on either side. The Supreme Court had recommended these 5 names. 2 more names have been recommended later, and there are 7 vacancies. Yep. But what is more important to note is that there are further vacancies which will rise in the next few months. There are 5 more. So the Supreme Court is a constantly changing personnel, like it said. Now, the question is, These are routine things. Routinely, do you know who is the commander of the army in the Eastern Command or the Western Command? Institutions must be allowed to have their personnel. Now, this hardball thing, I do not entirely agree with your news report.
Okay.
Because at the hearing itself, the Attorney General had informed the court that these 5 names would be cleared in a couple of days, and they have been. But the court did tell the Attorney General that it also has great problems with its transfers not being executed. You know, again, in the interests of justice, various judges have been transferred from one court to the other.
Yeah.
If the center sits on those files, or if the center gives an impression that despite the collegium recommending a transfer, the transfer is not allowed to happen. For instance, the Chief Justice of Orissa has been transferred to Madras to take over as Chief Justice. And he will have a few months there as Chief Justice of Madras. But there have been some very powerful people of Tamil origin who seem to have a problem there. Now, if it can be seen that any other agency can influence transfers, then institutional integrity gets imperiled. And that is why the Supreme Court said that maybe we'll have to take certain measures to see to it that things happen fast.
Institutional integrity, we're talking about independence basically over here, Mr. Pathania, Ranbir Singh Pathania, all of this unnecessary politicizing of the appointment process. In the emergency, we saw the Jansang, many of today's BJP leaders protesting against the politicization of the judiciary, against Indira Gandhi's subsequent attempts to promote judges who, you know, reportedly favored her. But what's the difference today? When the BJP is in power, it seems like it wants to do the same.
My strict and I could say right from the nose, my objections to this said comment. The independence of the judiciary is the most sacrosanct thing which the Constitution of India promises. But the other part of the affair remains that India is only the constitutional democracy in the world where judges appoint themselves as judges. There is the cosmopolitan principle of law that nobody could be a judge of his own case, and judges are appointing judges in India. The position under Indian Constitution, Article 124, the power to appoint judges is with the union government in consultation with the CJI. Then ultimately 1981 case, the 1993 case, and ultimately 1998 case, the collegium was put in place, and accordingly the National Judicial Appointments Commission, and then ultimately the 2015 judgment. There's not a question of rift. We just want to confabulate. We don't want to confuse. We want to discuss and deliberate. We don't want to dispute. And we don't want to...
Is that true? Discuss and deliberate? Because there seems to be something rude and, you know, really unpleasant in the way that the government seems to be going around the task of demanding a big say. Basically, you're demanding a say in the appointment of judges in constitutional courts. You hear salvo after salvo that seems unbecoming of a law minister. Today, again, he's the latest salvo is that the public is the master. That's the latest swipe, really, if you put it against the Supreme Court. Isn't there a better way? Perhaps we can all agree or to disagree that the collegium system does need reform. Maybe it does need more transparency, a more independent process. But is the manner in which the government is carrying out this campaign, is that worrying?
Sarah, this is the basic bottom line, that no question of rift, no question of firing salvos. Our constitution itself specified 3 independent organs, a system of checks and balances. Nobody is supreme, and supreme is the Constitution of India. So a system which is increasingly becoming opaque, a system we don't want to be encapsulated in a sort of cocoon. So law is never cast in stone. Law is never static. It is dynamic. So it evolves with the changing social conditions, with the changing political atmosphere, and with the new developments which are emerging on the national and on the international scene also. Our point remains that we want to reform. This impression should not go, but a section of a section of reports, a section of legal reporters, they have tried to paint it as a rift.
If you genuinely want reform, let's bring in Ashutosh Srivastav. If you genuinely want reform and you want some political control or involvement or say, Why not have it be partisan, for example, Ashutosh Srivastav? Where's the opposition having representation? Why solely with the government? Is that not dangerous? At least if you have, a joint government and opposition representation, at least as a check on the ability of the government to appoint pliant judges?
See, the entire issue arose, after 1993, when the collegium system was adopted by the Supreme Court itself. Though the law is very clear that there is no collegium system, either in Article 124 of the Constitution of India, or there has not been any provision made by the Parliament for the appointment of judges so far as the collegium system is concerned. And this is what was raised by the Law Minister, stating that there has to be some reform, there has to be some other way out, which could bring the transparency and speedy appointment of judges. This is what was said. Now, if we talk about these appointments today, which has happened after 2 months, now it is again the Supreme Court order itself in 2021, which made the timeline of 18 weeks for the completion of the procedure for the appointment of judges. So that comes more than 4 months. Now the government itself has done within 2 months. I think that is appreciable because it takes time. They also have to understand as to who are the people who are to be elevated to the Supreme Court judges. It should not be just a stamp by the government that the recommendation comes and they just do and the matter is finished. So,
So then would you agree that at least it shouldn't be just a stamp, but could there at least be not the government that is saying, could they have some opposition involved in this? To have actual
yes.
fair balance and checks and balances in place?
Yes, this is what was said. No, that when the Supreme Court has already made this collegium system, which was never there in the Constitution, and which was also not there by the...
We have Professor Faizan Mustafa. Is that true that this was never there in the Constitution?
Yes.
Yes, Sara, if you go by the text of the Constitution, definitely this word collegium is not there. But as I have been writing, that Article 124 and Constitution prefers to have a wider consultation. Now, this consultation, the President of India is supposed to do with the Chief Justice of India, with the other judges of the High Court and the judges of Supreme Court. Now, to formalize this consultation, the Supreme Court said initially that it would be the Chief Justice and 2 judges and 3 judges, and then they made it 5 judges. The worry is that if you look at the Modi government, so to say, its first major constitutional reform was National Judicial Appointment Commission.
Yeah.
And keep it in mind that there was a unanimity of opinion in the parliament. All opposition parties spoke in one voice against the collegium. So NJC was passed unanimously in Lok Sabha.
Yeah.
And in Rajya Sabha with near unanimity, with only Ram Jethmalani, voting against it. So the political class is definitely with government on this issue, that the government should have some say in the appointment of the judges. Now, what surprises me that after NJC judgment, where Supreme Court struck down both the constitutional amendment as well as the law, the government did not really create problem in the appointment of judges, except some cases here and there. So Gopal Subramaniam, they had an issue. They had an issue with Justice K.M. Joseph. Generally, the recommendations of the collegiums were very easily and timely cleared. In fact, Justice Gagoi was able to appoint as many as 14 judges. Justice Ramanna was able to appoint, 11 judges, 9 judges in one go, and 2 judges in about 48 hours or so. So that's why it's looking that the court is taking more time. And it is looking that there was some kind of a tussle because there were statements made by the Law Minister. But Law Minister is a very sincere minister. He is not talking about the names recommended. He is on a larger issue, that should there be a kind of a review and rethinking on the appointment of judges. And the clarity only recently came, Sara, when he said that I want some kind of a screening committee. in which there will be some representation of the state governments for the High Court and some representation of the center. And of course, the collegium will not be bound by the screening committee's recommendations. So I think for a constitutional democracy like ours, there has to be some say of the government. And it is good if we can debate that how we can improve the collegium system.
It's good if we can debate that civilly. Sanjay Hegde, so can anyone disagree that the collegium system doesn't need reform? Because right now, is it true that you only have a system where the judges can appoint, their cronies if needed?
That is a misnomer. Judges don't appoint judges. It is the government of the day that appoints judges. Judges recommend people for appointment. Those recommendations the government can differ with. They can ask for a reconsideration. But if it is reiterated, that appointment has to go through. This is a measure of judicial independence that the judges have brought about during the Congress regime, mind you. That was when Ram Jethmalani said there are two kinds of judges. Those who know the law and those who know the law minister. So now, probably the law minister wants judges who know the law minister. And that is exactly what this fight is about.
Ranveer Singh Patania, come in over there. But is there a problem if at the end of the day, if we've delegitimized the institution? Is that not worrying? Is that not a slippery slope? For example, we've seen the government's response to that BBC documentary on the Gujarat riots. The response has been that the Supreme Court cleared the Chief Minister Modi in the Gujarat riots. Now, if the centre is going to appoint judges, won't we reach a stage that, even judgments like that can be questioned? Where does it end then?
Sarah, first of all, we all have due respect to the Honorable Supreme Court as well as all the courts across the country. And we are a big harbinger and a big, we could say, proponent of the independence of judiciary. But with due respect and with due objections to what Mr. Sanjay Hegde says, the role of the government is just of a punctual postmaster in the matter of appointment of judges, or we could say an ever-ready rubber stamp. The government, the virtual appointing authority, Article 124 says, the power to appoint judges is with the union government. What in practice is going on? The Honorable Supreme Court can, if they reiterate the name of a judge with certain objections, they can overrule the objections of the government also. They can overrule the inputs and the reservations of the government also. And once they reiterate their recommendation, it has to be in all cases be followed in letter and spirit by the President's office and by the union government also. So we just want to, we are not saying that this is a faulty system. We need to discuss and deliberate. We say the sanctity of Article 124 needs to be discussed. We don't say we are not with a blanket statement on it that Article 124 has been read in brief. Not at all. Just we want to discuss.
Okay, we want to discuss. All right. Last 30 seconds. Last 30 seconds, Sanjay Hegde, and then we're out of time.
That is like what Mr. Patania is doing is to say that, we can discredit a woman, for instance, by saying that she's a very virtuous woman. These are allegations against the judiciary as a virtuous institution. We want to discuss. Are they on the virtuous path? Are they only appointing their kith and kin? Are they only appointing favored people? There is a deliberate campaign to delegitimize the judiciary, and I really fear that they are succeeding.
Those are ominous words. Thank you so much. This is not the last we've heard on this. We'll continue to discuss this topic. Thank you all for joining us for tonight.